And welcome to the Professional Pivot. I'm your host, Maggie Ruby. Here at the Professional Pivot, we believe that networking is the mechanism, relationships are the story, and professional pivots are the outcome. I have people that come up to me saying, I think I really figured out what I want to do. Now I just don't know how to translate that. So I hear you're hired, or even to get the first round interview. I've also spoken to people who says, I have no idea where even to start. It made me start thinking about defining your desired career. How do you go about doing that? And then how do you translate that to make it into a reality? So you get that job and you hear you're hired. I also hear a bunch about, we live in very unpredictable times right now. That's just a reality. And the job market is very, very challenging at best. So I think that pulling all these experiences and questions and examples might help make this come to life. I'm a big believer in if you can see it, you can do it. Let's figure out how you see your desired job. How do I understand what I'm looking for? That really comes from a process of deep self-reflection. And you figure out what you want as a person, and how do you translate that into the technical components to actually make it work, make it happen? So self-reflection and then market research, and you marry those two things, and you have a pretty powerful combination. By systematically analyzing your internal drivers and then your external requirements, you can move from a dream of what you're looking for into a real concrete, actionable map, plan, target, list, strategy, whatever you want to call it. But I get all of those questions all the time. This goes beyond simply just updating your resume. It goes into establishing goals and preferences that are important to you and customized specifically to the unique you. All right, so here we go. So I've got 10 things, and these kind of, again, I'm pulling from questions and conversations and examples that I've had before with individuals. I think my thoughts around this, I can break it down into 10 things that are widely recognized as effective ways to define your ideal role and establish non-negotiables that really help you avoid the hit or miss job search. Because that's another conversation I have with people where they're saying, I've applied to so many roles, I've customized the roles, but I feel like it's hit or miss. I don't know if there's anything that I can do. I'm constantly applying and not hearing back or getting thank you, but no thank you. So we're going to define this a little bit. I do want to say that I'm going to use the word non-negotiable. These are deal breakers for me. And if I don't get these in a job, I'm not going to be happy and I'm not going to be able to fulfill my, extreme deliverables and be wildly successful. With that said, make very specific non-negotiable lists and be crisp about them. If I'm going to break out 10 things that I've learned from my conversations with other people and my own personal experiences in the workplace, the first thing you need to do is conduct a deep self-assessment. You really need to know yourself and what makes you happy and what makes you tick. So in order to do this, start by looking inward and understand what truly motivates you. These would be things like passions, interests, and natural talents. This is interesting. I was having this conversation the other day, and if I focus on what I'm passionate about, I would be happy doing it all day. I wouldn't mind staying up late doing it because I love it so much. You will naturally be successful at it. We want to incorporate that into our strategy. Begin by evaluating what makes you come alive and where you feel the most confident. And ask yourself, when did you feel the most engaged at work? Let's do a little reflection. Think back. I was talking to an individual the other day and I said, what were the best things that you did in your job that you absolutely loved? And they rattled off 5 things. And I said, okay, what are things in that same example that people actually come to you and say, I'm looking for your expertise in? Because clearly that's a standout skill that people recognize you for. Those are important things to be able to map out. And then if you really want to take it a little bit deeper, you can use some tools to help you with assessments. If you're not quite sure how to put things into, a list of what I'm really passionate about, what I enjoyed about my job, There is the Myers-Briggs type indicator, or even there's a whole bunch of personality assessments that are out on the internet that you can view your traits objectively. And there's questions that'll prompt you that help you land and get to those answers. Oftentimes, they actually add another dimension to it, which helps you successfully match those with career paths that you might want to think about. It gives you kind of a full experience with this is what I'm good at, and this is how I could translate it into something real. The second step that I think that is important, and I kind of have second and third steps combined. Second step is core skills, and the third step is core values. So if you merge those together, I think core skills are superpowers. Those are technical skills, your interpersonal abilities, and then can't forget about transferable skills. I can't tell you how many times somebody comes to me and says, I read these job descriptions and they are very rigid in terms of the requirements. And as a recruiter, I can honestly say that sometimes hiring managers are dead set. They need to come from this industry, have done the job, same title over and over. And you hope you have a good recruiter that can help you communicate transferable skills. But I think it's also important for you to map out some ideas of things that you have done. So first, back up and take a look at what the job requirements are. Like they're requiring X. What have I done? Maybe not exactly X, but is very similar. And that's where you start morphing and creating transferable skills. It opens up the aperture so much when you're actually applying to a job, and especially in an interview. So they say, give me an example of when you've done X. And we know that's going to be a rigid requirement. So how do you then take it off the page and say, well, let me give you an example of what I have done that requires that exact same scenario. And then you take control of the conversation, and then you give examples of what you've done. And that empowers that recruiter to go back and sell it to the hiring manager. So I have those conversations a lot. And then I think there's also some other transferable skills that are big umbrella pieces like leadership, communication, critical thinking. All of those apply really to most jobs in all industries. Make sure you have those crisply outlined and ready to speak to. A third step, again, is the core values. So core skills, core values. And again, I think the values should be deal breakers for you. This is really who you are as a person and what you stand for. And you want to make sure that the workforce and the workplace that you want to go into will be fulfilling. If not, that's going to be a place that you might not be very happy with if your values are conflicting, especially with the company values. So determine what matters most to you. It is, for example, like being able to make a social impact, being innovative, having stability, working autonomously. But these are things that are important to you and values that you want to integrate into your ideal job. And aligning your job search with these convictions prevent future burnout, which we've probably all experienced at one point or another, and will help maintain a level of satisfaction and fulfillment. And again, think about the company's values. And you can always go into a website. I actually direct people study up on the company all the time, but I get a lot of questions. How do you know what the values are? And it's very easy to go into the company website because they always list their mission statement and their core values. So it's an easy way to then see what those are and see how they tick and tie to your own personal values. The fourth step that's important is picture your ideal lifestyle. Remember I said, if you can see it and believe it, you can make it happen. Picture your ideal lifestyle, manifest it into the universe. And I have this conversation with so many people. They'll come to me and say, I'm not really sure, how I want. And I say, well, think about your lifestyle. What do you want out of your life, and what makes you happy? So consider how a job fits into your life beyond the office. Define your requirements for like work-life balance and flexibility, which is very important. Think about your preference. And this kind of goes to work-life balance and flexibility, working remotely, hybrid, in office. Where do you thrive? What fits your environment? Some people really want to get up and go into the office every day, and some people really can maximize their deliverables by working from home in their own environment, probably with sweatpants below the monitor. And think about the pace of your work. Do you thrive in fast-paced environments? Or do you need more structure around it? This one I find very interesting because A lot of people say they like fast moving, fast paced environments, but when you get in there and it becomes a frustration, you really need to have a real heart to heart conversation with yourself about the environment and the culture that you really want to and know that you thrive in. Another component is to consider the commute, which is a reality today. We went from in office, fully in office, to completely remote. And now so many companies are pushing back towards in office and hybrids. Take a look at your commute. That's a reality of your day to day, and that can burn you out very quickly if you overcommit saying it's such a great job, I can do this commute. And then you wind up over the course of time, you're up early and you're exhausted trying to get to and from. The fifth idea that I have is establish financial goals. And this is just a reality that we live in today. Determine non-negotiable salary. Put pencil to paper, do the math. I get a lot of people saying, do I need to, take a lower paycheck in order to land the job? And that's such a personal question. And I always respond to people, do pencil to paper. What do you need to pay your bills? And then that kind of needs to be the threshold of the jobs that you pursue. But it's important because I've seen it happen so many times. And I was actually just talking to an individual and they said, you know what, I shortchanged myself. I wanted this job so bad. And I went in and I applied for it and I actually got the job, but it was way under the salary that I was looking for. And then it translated into it was way under my living expenses. And I just couldn't make it work. So at the end of the day, it was a handicap. I don't want everybody to undersell and be so rigid that you can't be somewhat flexible with your salaries because you don't want to cut yourself out of being able to get a job. Sometimes a job with a slightly flexible salary is better than no job at all. And today it's a competitive environment. This is a very personal thing, but it's important to do because you don't want to get in there and have any surprises. Some things I tell people that they can do is they can look on salary.com. Glassdoor is another perfect example so that they can research some realistic pay ranges for roles that they're interested in. So keep that in mind to use those resources to help you create what your ideal target range is. And that range is the way to look at it. It's more flexible and gives some wiggle room. Step 6, put a list together of your gotta have this and I do not want this. And it's interesting because oftentimes people don't even, and again, I was talking to an individual the other day and I said, okay, what can't you live without? Think about your other job that you've had and what are the things that you really, these are deal breakers. And we started comparing it to like, if you're going to rent or buy an apartment or even buy a home, you kind of go through a list of these are things I need. I need central air conditioning. I need to have a garage. I need to have it be commutable, in a location that's commutable to schools or to the subway system. I live in New York, so therefore subways are part of the topics. So think about must-haves in your work and translate it into what are must-haves that are important to me. And then the absolutely, I do not want this to happen. Those are sometimes the easier ones because what you didn't like in your last job are things that you really want to avoid. And it's the setting. It's not necessarily whether or not you had a great boss or not a great boss. There's always things that you can take away from it. But it's really important to think about what are task or job requirements or things that you will be performing that you absolutely didn't like. So that helps you. Must-haves, absolutely don't want. And then consolidate your findings into a master list. And I love lists because you know what? I think when you make a list, it makes it real. You commit to it because you've now put it down on paper and it's crystal clear. So I'm a big list maker. So make a master list of mandatory criteria for any potential role that you might be interested. And here's something important to think about. Identify these super early in the process because it helps you filter out opportunities that just aren't potentially a good fit for you. And I was having a conversation. They said, got very far down the line. And then I realized that as I was having conversations in the interview process, that now we were talking about things that I knew I wasn't going to work, that weren't going to work for me. Now we've done this inward looking and reflections and started to thinking about what we want, what we don't want. Now let's translate this into starting to laser in on what's going to be specific industries that you want to target and specific roles. Now we're tightening this up a little bit. So explore which sectors you're looking to go into, which job titles that you're interested in based on everything that we've just talked about. And this is one thing that I highly recommend. It's called the Occupational Outlook Handbook, and it comes in a book form, but it's maintained digitally by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics and is a premier source of career guidance featuring hundreds of occupations. This really opens up the aperture of maybe even some industry sectors or jobs that you hadn't even thought of, that your transferable skills or your direct technical skills or soft skills mirror to. It's a way to think broader than you have before. I recommend this to a lot of people. It's worth checking out. Then this is one of my favorites. Conduct informational interviews. And this goes back to one thing that is true to our professional pivot, but it also is true to everything that you should live and breathe. Network, network, network. I tell everybody that I talk to how critical this component is. And the more you network, the bigger and broader your network becomes, and the more powerful you are to be able to use warm introductions to get into jobs. I just can't emphasize this enough. So when networking, use your time wisely and be extremely clear. Because when you're networking, you also don't want to just be rambling. So be crisp and clear and develop a career story. Draft, like literally, this kind of is your elevator pitch, a 60-second summary that articulates who you are, your skills, and why a specific career is a good fit for you. Because that helps the person that you're networking with also understand what you're looking for, which can help them narrow down recommendations that they also might give you. And again, use it like your elevator pitch, crisp and concise. And then connect with professionals in your desired field, now that you've narrowed all this down, to gain realistic insights into their day-to-day work. And that is also important because their day-to-day realities of what they actually do helps you understand if those are realities that mirror to what your haves and haves not are. And also, very importantly, this can often identify opportunities before they're even posted. So when you're talking to someone in the network, they might actually know of a job. And it was interesting. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, "You're not going to believe this. I actually was looking for a very specific job. I was in just a networking conversation. It was casual. It wasn't even job specific. In that conversation with the person they were networking with, that person said, well, you know what's interesting? It really makes me think there's a job that we have open currently in our company. I don't think that it's even public knowledge yet." And then this individual got connected, and then they wound up getting hired. So this all came out of being able to network, have some insider information that wasn't public on any of the job postings, and a successful hire translated. And by the way, I followed up with them, and they are wildly successful because everything lined up together. Very exciting stuff. And then step 8, I would say, if I was looking at this in kind of just a format flow, ideal job description. Draft your ideal job description. So write out a job description. You can use a job description format that's typically the consistent category headers that are on all the postings for a role that maybe doesn't exist, because now you're customizing your ideal job and making your own job description, your ideal job description, and the impact you want to make and the type of manager and company you want to work for. And this was interesting. I was actually watching a very impressive CEO, renowned in his profession. He had previously spoken to an individual that he was trying to get to come in and fill a very high, specific senior role in the organization. And the person that he was speaking to wasn't sure if he really wanted to go back into the workplace and whether or not this was the right role for him. And so what the CEO did, and this kind of ties to the job description component, he said, you know what? Take some time, go back, write your ideal job description of something that you might be interested in, and then come back. And that individual did. And then he handed it over to the CEO. And it was great. The CEO took a look at it, said, put it on the desk and slid it across the desk and says, okay, now there's the job description. Please tell me why you aren't sure that you want this job. And so it's kind of a theme of it's great to know what you want. That individual was hired and was with the company for a very long time and made great impacts because it was a very senior, high profile role. So it's good to know what you want. Job description, create your own. This exercise will also help you recognize the real version of a job when you see it live on a job board. So now this will jump out to you because you've already kind of framed it. Now you know what you're looking for. The ninth step is test the waters first. Validate your definitions by engaging with the industry. So reach out for informal interviews, do mock interviews with people that you know that are in the interview that you're comfortable enough doing so with, and speak to professionals in those roles that you're looking for. Real world feedback often reveals aspects of a job that you can't find in a written job description. Test the waters through experiences. In previous episodes, by the way, we've spoken about the possibility of taking on fractional jobs, a contract position, side gigs, freelance projects, volunteering, and even shadowing professionals in their desired field. These actions will help confirm in the career that you're looking for whether or not this truly is the right fit for you. Try it on before you necessarily buy it, if you will. And the 10th and final step that I'd kind of like to draw your attention to is create an action plan. This takes everything that we've been talking to and create a SMART career goals. If you haven't ever dealt with SMART goals, SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals. So they are achievable because there's some very specific, measurable things that you can do, and you've set yourself a time limit to do it in. And I think for people that are early in their career, might not have ever heard for this. And so when they put together goals, they're, pie in the sky and maybe not realistic. So you really want to drill it down and make it grounded. This translates your vision into a concrete, manageable milestones that you can deliver on and accomplish. Define what you need to achieve the next month, year, 5 year, do a 5-year plan to reach your desired position. So real quickly, let me just run through some things that are top of mind that I talk to people constantly when I'm coaching them or just in casual conversations as a recruiter to somebody that's looking to establish a job. Do a self-assessment. Take a look at your core skills and core values. Think about your ideal lifestyle. Really take a look at your financial goals and what are realities around your day-to-day, what you need to pay the bills with. And then my favorite, gotta haves, don't wants. And then take all of that and then kind of plug it into target industries and specific roles. So now what we're doing is we're funneling it down and getting very specific. Create your ideal job description, which I think is a big win and fun to do, by the way. You learn a lot about yourself through this process. Test the waters, try it on before you buy it. Create a very specific action plan. And again, don't play in the gray area. Be crisp, concise, and map it out. And I know that sounds very formal, but these are secrets to success of really how to define what you're looking for. So it's worth it to kind of go through all of this. So now with all of that laid out and you have defined, because you've gone through and you've actually done all of that and you've defined your desired career. Now let's talk about how do you translate that into a reality? And one of the things that, again, I started at the top of this episode by saying, I have so many people that come up to me and say, I know what I want, but I cannot translate this into a reality. I can't get a job interview. I can't get past the job interview. I'm really looking and hungry to hear you're hired. And so now how do we take that desired career and translate it into a reality? This is so important, especially if you're early in your career and this is new to you. Or even if you're established in your job. To make your desired job a reality requires moving through reflection to execution. So we've done the reflection in creating the job description and the job that you are desired and want. And now we're going to execute. So this process involves bridging the gap between your current state and your target role through strategic planning, skill development, and networking. Networking. So here are 5 things that I share with people that can help make this happen. First is build your bridge. And in other words, this is how to complete a gap analysis. And this is what's important because oftentimes you think you want something, and now you have to drill back and pull back and say, okay, here is my current resume, and this is my ideal job description. But in order to identify the gaps, you really need to study the job posting for your target role and see what the employees are looking for. Then you need to go back and figure out, okay, and this is where you have to be super honest with yourself. Take a look at where you're missing qualifications. Make a note of those certifications that they're looking for that would make it a preferred candidate selection, technical skills that you might or might not currently have, or experiences that you might need to explore. So where you are today, where you want to, what they're looking for, and anything that doesn't completely align is a gap. And this is what we want to fill. And you can fill it by upskilling strategically. So use platforms like Coursera or LinkedIn Learning to close those gaps. If you're missing leadership experience, look for volunteer projects or lead a new initiative in your current role. And take a look at things that you can do that create activities that you can then incorporate into your resume that complete those gaps and speak to those. The second thing I think is important to do is tailor your professional brand. Your brand is very unique and it speaks to you, and it's why you're going to be a standout and get that job that you want and make it a reality. Stop using one size fits all. People have a cookie cutter approach sometimes. I was having a conversation with an individual and they were literally looking to try to transition into a completely different industry. And I said, what you're doing is you're trying to take a one size and like a square peg in a round hole, and you're trying to force it into this role. So customize your resume. You need to really pull back and take a look at customizing your resume so that it speaks to what you're looking for. Align your past achievements. Really rely on real truths, your past achievements with the specific keywords and requirements that you're finding in your target job descriptions. And again, it's just the way you frame it. And optimize and take full advantage of LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is a powerful source because it's kind of shifted into a storyteller. Update your profile and reflect your new direction. Use your professional summary that explains your career story, which we spoke about earlier. Create your career story and incorporate where you've been and why your next step is a logical progression. The third element is tap into the hidden job market. And I think this one is really profound. As I've mentioned before in earlier episodes, up to 70% of jobs are never published on public job boards. And that means that there's a lot that's out there that you're missing out if you're just solely focusing on the job boards. So conduct informational interviews, reach out to people currently doing the job that you want, and ask about their daily challenges and what skills they find are the most valuable. Utilize your network, and request introductions. Once you have a short list of target companies, and this is again, you're very strategic about this, you're laser focused and you're targeting in so that you're not just all over the place with anything goes. Target companies, short list. Ask your network for warm introductions to employees there. This day and age, I think that it's great to apply and go through the process. You're up against AI and bots interpreting your resume. It's not as much keywords anymore. It's about interpretation. So a warm interview, I can't put enough value on. There was an individual and all they were doing was submitting to the job boards. And I said, who do you know? Like, who's truly a warm connection? Not just going in through LinkedIn and say, I'm connected to this person. You really need to know them. But warm introductions, I think, is going to be the secret to success for so many transitions into a reality of landing that job. So think that through. It's very important. The fourth component is, again, a SMART action plan, and how to apply it. Complete a self-assessment and identify 10 target companies. Update all marketing materials, your resume and your LinkedIn profiles, and reach out to conduct 3 informational interviews. And then start a sales campaign for yourself. Start to market yourself. Market your brand. That's what makes you stand out as a unique individual, including cold outreach and formal applications. Don't lose sight of those. Track every interaction that you have so that you're starting to create a theme and a thread that runs through everything, because again, this helps you hone in and map it out. The fifth and final thing is important to make your desired career into reality is to master the narrative. During interviews, you must confidently explain how the gaps or pivots in your career have taken place and frame those experiences to take control of the narrative. Frame these experiences as purposeful growth rather than just time off. So for instance, if you did take a break and you incorporated some study into the time that you were off, then highlight and be able to speak to those as between this job, I actually focused on getting some specific certifications or projects that help enhance my opportunities to make a bigger difference in my next job. And that translated to a successful transition. So use those, fill the void. So there's continuity. That pretty much maps out everything and all my thoughts. Again, pulling from real life stories and conversations I've had with individuals and from my years of experience in recruitment, things that I think will help you shine and make it happen. So let's turn your desired career into your perfect and successful reality. Dream it, see it, believe it. And I hope you've enjoyed and gained some new perspectives from this episode. And remember, here at the Professional Pivot, we believe that networking is the mechanism, relationships are the story, and professional pivots are the outcome. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe. Have a nice day, and until next time.